the whole purpose is to keep the world supplied with video, because none of us have the stomach, I can hear that Dave doesn't, I don't either, for watching war video. Because in part, Western Europe and North America has been at peace since 1945. We've lost the ability to watch war.
Dave Smith is on fire lately. He is everywhere, talking to all the people that everyone watches. He is absolutely rising to be the most prominently known libertarian. And he is putting our ideas out there in ways that have never been achieved before. And some of what he says is an accurate reflection of libertarian principle, and some of it isn't. And we're going to talk about it, probably often as time goes on. So in this video, we're going to talk about two things. And both of them, I think, are hopeful. They're white pills. A little in disguise, but they're white pills. I want to talk about just war theory, and I want to talk about how cell phones and the internet are going to be the end of it.
I was talking to my kids about this. You know, when I was young, you couldn't follow war in the way that you can now through a phone, with seeing every single thing that's happening in gruesome, uncensored detail beam straight to your face. My memory was a very sanitized coverage. I mean, you saw, you know, quite long distance footage of bombs going off and stuff. What you didn't see was what I see on my phone all day long, which is people's heads being blown off and horrific, terrible imagery, which I think is partly responsible for why so many young people are getting their brains fried by their phones, by the way. This constant horrific dopamine that's coming their way from newspapers, from the very few television news programs and so on. We were really protected from the harsh reality of war in a way that is not applicable right now. We see it all. And I think that Israel can have all the arguments that it wants, and I have a lot of sympathy with many of them. But what they've lost, without any doubt to me at all, is they've lost the PR war through video coverage from the battlefield. You know, that's what's horrified people the most.
Well, isn't that something? For the first time in the history of the human species, everyone gets to see the cost of war, the absolute human carnage. Eric says, we've lost the ability to watch war. I suspect that we never really had it to begin with. It's only through desensitization from birth, through things like forceful parenting and all the horrors of history, that desensitized us in general to human suffering. And now we're finally getting to that point where we're starting to see carnage for the evil that it is. This is historic. Pierce appears to me, at least, to talk about it like it's a bad thing, that we're getting this direct feed from the battlefields. We're witnessing heads getting blown off. I mean, who on Twitter has managed to avoid seeing an explosives-laden drone piloted by a Ukrainian or a Russian fly directly into somebody with their hands up surrendering to get dismembered immediately? Governments and armies, PR departments are both hyperactive now and also powerless now to control the narrative anywhere near the degree they used to, because we can see with our own eyes what's happening. Yeah, just war theory, you know, fancy expert talk from generals with a bunch of stars or experts in the field, whatever. It doesn't matter. We can see what's happening. We see the little girl with her arm blown off. We see the rubble covering an entire family that was alive moments before. We see the jihadis breaking into someone's home and murdering people, setting them on fire. You can't hide anymore. Governments can't hide their violence from us anymore. And the reaction that we're having is one that brings me so much hope. The reaction the world is having is, stop this. Stop it. This is not okay. You can't do this.
Even when George W. Bush invaded Iraq, the images that we would see would be like these aerial views of a projectile going in and kind of an explosion in the distance. And okay, that's a lot easier to root for than seeing the image of a baby with his arm blown off on this, which, I mean, my God, all day long on Twitter, I see that. What's happening here is that people are being brought closer and closer to the reality of war.
Now I want to talk about the response. I want to talk about just war theory.
Israel is intentionally killing civilians, especially children. That's not a factual statement at all, because it doesn't even include the base information. So it's almost like, you just don't know the information you need to know to make that judgment. And, let's forget comparing it to a domestic situation like Dave continues to do on Joe Rogan, Lex Friedman, others. Like, if somebody killed my kids and I know where he's at, and I go to that apartment building and I kill everybody in it, that's murder. And that's what Israel is doing. And that's not true. That's not how war works. It's not even how you would assess that situation, because it completely rules out what the law of war says about proportionality, about assessing what is the target, who is that individual, what's his value, concrete value.
It is so rare that we get such a clear example of the mind virus that is statism, that is the belief in the just authority of the government and laws and legal systems, and society is this massive collective consciousness. This guy is appearing on this show representing sort of himself as this grand wizard of the spellcasting system that is the war laws. and anyone that isn't familiar with his arcane system isn't just ignorant. They're not even worthy of discussing the topic. And any other system or mechanism of discussing what happens during war is just completely invalid. It's just completely wrong. Everyone, according to him in his spellcaster's mind, agrees that these are the rules for war. Society has agreed. There's no questioning here. I'm the wizard. I know the deep magic. You don't. You're making silly little emotional, silly little moral arguments, but I'm talking about the law.
That's not the history of war from the creation, literally, of city-states going out and everything.
Again, I think
the frameworks to judge war, we as societies, all the societies of war, the Geneva Conventions is one example, have decided here are the boundaries of brutality of war. Dave's statement, stand on his own, of showing that he doesn't know the foundations of war, even if it's what you call a just war or just execution of the war. You're just not communicating that you know enough to make a statement like that.
So what is just war theory? Well, this goes back, and I mean way back to Cicero and Augustine. Thomas Aquinas really kicked it off. 2 parts. Jus ad bellum and jus in bello. Jus ad bellum, the right to war, meaning it addresses questions of, is it morally right to start this war or to participate in it? And jus in bello, which is how to behave during your participation in the war. So for you to have the right to go to war, you have to meet 3 criteria. It has to be for what is considered to be a just cause, things like self-defense or for protecting innocent people. It has to be declared by a legitimate government. And you have to do it with the right intentions. It can't be for revenge or conquest. And it has to only be done as a last resort after all other peaceful options have been exhausted. Then, once you're in the state of war, there's 2 rules. You need to minimize harm to civilians, and you need to utilize the minimum necessary level of force. What's interesting and cool about this, there's several things actually. If you think about these rules, only act in self-defense or protecting other innocent people. Go into it with good intentions, not for revenge or conquest. And when you're doing it, try and minimize harm, especially to innocents that aren't involved. And even with the people that are involved, try and use the minimum necessary force required to, affect the self-defense or the protection of innocents. Where have we heard rules like this before? I mean, this is really kind of basic, common ethics. And in a lot of ways, a lot of this is very libertarian principle-ish. Only act with force in self-defense or protecting innocents. And another thing that's really cool about this that none of these law wizards seem to ever notice is that these are rules that evolved over a long period of time between countries, between cities and townships, and between governments. What is the state of existence between governments? Anarchy. There is no overarching, authoritative, overriding government body that enforces these principles. These evolved naturally in the state of anarchy between countries and between governments. And to a large degree, that's also how these are enforced. If a country goes off the rails, starts violating these rules and these principles of warfare, they start getting sanctioned and shunned and disassociated with by other countries, and even acted against with other countries' militaries. A lot of the things that we tend to talk about when we talk about how things could function in a free society between individuals. But here's the break. Here's the difference. Here's the problem. Here's the thing that completely invalidates this entire endeavor of just war theory. It is nothing ever other than a massive, gross collectivization of a bunch of people. It attempts to take very normal, basic moral rules that most everyone on the planet agrees with. Don't hurt people and don't take their stuff. Rules that work at the individual level. They govern individual to individual interactions. And it attempts to collectivize them and put them into use at the level of countries and governments and these masses of people, these institutions. Well, in the same way that this wizard says that these moral arguments just don't apply in war, I'm telling him his collectivist daydreaming and politicians' scribbles and magic spell scrolls don't have any application or bearing on morality. So he can study his incantations all he wants, but I'm sorry, if it fails the morality test, which is an individual interaction test, then it's all junk science. The reason why just war theory is something that's taken by so many as default common sense between countries and governments is because these are the same rules that they apply between themselves and their neighbors. These rules that are so moral and so correct and useful at the individual level, it's just assumed that it will work the same way between countries. And like massive innocent carnage aside, it actually kind of does work between countries to a certain degree. The problem is that pesky morality thing. You can't call something self-defense if it creates a single new innocent victim. You can't call something defending the innocent if it attacks and harms and destroys and kills the innocent. And the only way they're able to pretend like it works that way is because they collectivize everyone into these conglomerates. America attacked Iran. Israel got attacked by Hamas. Ukraine is being invaded by Russia. These are all euphemisms. These are all collectivisms that obfuscate what's actually happening, which is that there are real individual people taking real individual actions. And each of those actions and interactions between those people have different moral circumstances and different moral outcomes and judgments. If someone attacks you or murders a family member of yours, and you go and your response is to bomb the building that the attacker, the person that did that to you, bomb the building that they are currently in, along with 3 innocent children, there are 4 moral interactions there that take place. One of them is perfectly moral. It's totally fine to kill a person that has attacked you or murdered your loved one. And then there's 3 additional interactions that also happen at the same time, where you obliterate 3 completely innocent people. But all this gets lost in the collectivism of it all. There's a beautiful quote from Ayn Rand. She says in the book Anthem, quote, "The word we is as lime poured over men, which sets and hardens to stone and crushes all beneath it. And that which is white and that which is black are lost equally in the gray of it. It is the word by which the depraved steal the virtue of the good, by which the weak steal the might of the strong, by which the fools steal the wisdom of the sages. But I am done with this creed of corruption. I am done with the monster of we, the word of serfdom, of plunder, of misery, falsehood, and shame. And now I see the face of God, and I raise this God over the earth, this God whom men have sought since men came into being, this God who will grant them joy and peace and pride, this God, this one word, I, not we, I. Don't allow people any longer to paper over human carnage with this collectivism, this we, this society's rules. No. Murder is murder is murder."
Once you're appealing to the law or appealing to how warfare actually works, you're missing the entire point that I was making. So there was a woman, a building collapsed. She says, as she's walking down the building, she can hear the little kids, not 16-year-old members of Hamas. You're talking 4 and 5-year-olds screaming for their mothers while they're buried underneath the rubble, screaming for help from their mommy. And you know what, Pierce? No help is coming because there's no bulldozers in Gaza. Nobody's coming to get those kids out. This is the reality of war. If you're going to say that our goal here is to degrade Hamas and the cost of it is those little children dying under rubble, screaming for their mother as their bones are crushed and no one's coming to help them, then fine. But at least say that you find that price acceptable. And then we could have a real conversation about why people are going to view you as a monster and why the other side will never stop fighting and will always be against you. Because I could tell you for sure, if that was my kids, and I know, Pierce, if those were your kids as well, you wouldn't want to hear anything about how, well, we've codified in international law that this is the norm of the way wars are allowed to be fought versus not allowed to be fought. I'm making a very human point that this is the reality of war. And you can say under international humanitarian law, it's not considered intentional. We would consider this an intentional act in any other area. That's the point. It's a very basic human point that if anyone were to do this domestically and then tried to use the defense of like, no, but I dropped a leaflet. No, I didn't really want to kill them. I just wanted to kill them. We'd go, I don't care. You blew up a building knowing there were kids in there. That's the essence of this whole thing. And there's no amount, there's no amount of expertise that can really get you away from this basic fundamental moral logic.
Pierce,
okay, but Dave, let me ask you.
Dave, when I compliment Dave's rhetorical skills, it is not without good reason. Well done, Dave. Excellent job. The last point I want to make illustrates the absolute absurdity of these just war theorists' magic spells. There's an analog with many situations throughout history where there are, some kind of ingrained societal victims. Think slavery. So let's think back during the times of slavery, and we're the abolitionists. And this guy is the guy arguing for the current legal institution of owning people. And we make a moral argument and we say it is absolutely evil and immoral and unjustifiable to own another human. To which he responds down his nose, scoffing, "You just don't know how the law works. You don't know how the slave-owning property norms and logic work. This is internationally recognized and agreed on by society. You're just ignorant. You're just a stupid podcasting comedian. Go away now." It's a pretty close analog to what we're hearing with this just war theory. But there's hope here. When people are watching the slaves be whipped on a global basis, live on video, in their feed, all day, every day, it's kind of hard to keep hearing about the legal justifications for owning people. It's kind of hard to keep caring about these nonsense justifications that worked on so many people for so long because they didn't really understand what was going on. Well, now we know what's going on. We see it daily, and there's nothing you can do to hide it anymore. To the people that think the internet has been a net negative, that social media has been a net negative, and that are really pessimistic on technology and how it's being used for bad things, well, just take a moment, take a breath, and realize the internet and social media and our ability to communicate more directly with one another is going to murder just war theory. This is going to end because we see it now. We can see it. Happy day. Peace, love, and anarchy.